Going to be heating a shock dart, but he's able to makes it win anything. Sam, defend your team because they haven't won. Oh my God!
Strap yourselves in. It's another 1 hour episode.
Oh yeah.
Spike defused.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Press for Defuse, your weekly source of Valorant news and discussion. I'm Naruzuki, and I'm going to be taking you through this week's episode where once again we're missing one of our three. Mike is apparently on another vision quest. He seems to take these far more seriously than I do. But of course we have back our regular guest, Anders, because it's far easier.
What do you mean you don't have the core three?
True story.
I mean, at this point, you're more consistent than either of these two.
Either of you two, excuse me. It's really funny that we got called to join the show, and then we were like, all right, so for the next 3 months, either myself or not going to be here. Have fun.
Pretty much. No, that sounds about right.
But it's good to have you back as always. As I'm sure that you're going to have a lot of interesting insights. I am refreshing, Cody.
Our producer just yelling at Sam. This show's already off to a great start.
Like,
this is the top tier content you all come for.
Refreshed, and he is still yelling in my ear, and I'm like, bruh, give me half a second. All right. So anyway, always good to have you back to have the show. So let's dive right in. This has already started very frustratingly, and I'm sure we have a lot of ranting to do outside of production yelling. So first and foremost, probably the biggest and hottest topic of the night. And that's going to be the patch notes. A massive has got changes to like all sorts of controllers. We've got changes for Icebox. There's a lot of big stuff happening here. We are going to go through the patch from bottom. So Anders, please don't get ahead of yourself. One step at a time.
And I mean, we just gotta start at the top. Right? We just got to go bit by bit. Anders, I know you're going to want to jump straight into Astro and Viper. Believe me, I want to talk about Viper too. But let's just go down the line because there was a lot of changes done to a lot of different things. And let's start off, we got to ease ourselves into it. So Omen gets some changes, right? We can take a look at those because I think those are the least controversial changes.
But wait, we gotta talk about this change first. They improved the system for ability placement. There's one place where this is actually significant.
Is there?
The Viper's pits that you use as like site exec expansion mechanics. So the Viper's pit out of showers on bind. The Viper's pit onto site from There's a bunch. I'm not going to say other ones because I don't think that they're commonly used. But the Viper's Pit showers on Bind is a perfect example of this because historically it was hard to get your reticle to place in the way where it would expand the way you wanted it to and not also clip into the door frame. So this is actually a nice QOL thing.
Okay, I might have fixed it. It might have been my fault, guys. I fixed it. I'm gonna refresh. Hold on.
Okay, Paul broke my microphone.
I might have broken everything.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no,
Is it
not
safe?
like this. Cody?
I need some confirmation here.
Oh, my mic is good now, so it was definitely you. All right, cool.
Discord,
right.
Discord changed what my output was, so it was putting through my microphone as well to you guys. Anyways, we're good now. We can actually talk about the patch now.
It wasn't
Thank you
my
for
fault.
sticking
Good
with
to
us,
know.
guys. My bad.
Esports, you know what? We're going to get into some other fun production shenanigans shortly, but let's get through the patch notes first. So, Omen's changes seem really interesting. I think the most fun one to me is the projectile speed, which now his dark cover just freaking neumes. Aside from that, I don't know. I feel like I want to just defer everything to Anders because he's the coach. So, tell us about Omen.
I mean, the Omen changes are really nice.
Mm-hmm.
The projectile speed is definitely the biggest one. He's closer to like an exec controller than he's ever been before. The problem that he's historically had is that his projectile speed on his smokes was so horrible that you basically couldn't run him as a solo controller unless you were capable of executing with a single smoke. Because him having to shoot two at once meant that he was going to be extremely disjointed from the rest of your team when you executed. This remedies a very large amount of that. It doesn't fix it perfectly, but it's closer than it's ever been, and so you'll probably see a bit more Omen as a result of that. Jury is out on whether or not that'll actually happen, though, based off the other controller changes, so we'll have to see. The cooldown reduction on it is also huge. I think that's probably... People are like, oh, look at my zoom-in smokes, and... less paying attention to the fact that he gets them 10 seconds faster, which is honestly titanic. This means that he can do like an early round conditioning smoke and actually still be able to execute at a reasonable pace, which that's probably more valuable than even the projectile speed is.
I mean,
I just like the fact that you can't paranoia your whole team anymore, so that's nice.
Well, you can. It's just harder to do.
It's just harder, yeah.
I was gonna say, your ranked teammates will still find a way. Don't you worry.
These are basically just like quality of life changes, though, right? Across the board, more or less. They're not super impactful. I doubt we're gonna see much more Omen than we were, except for like teams that want to run like a niche Omen strat, more so around the paranoia, because like paranoia has always been a really good ability.
Exactly.
Like the it's a massive blind that now it's less likely to hit your teammates, which helps a lot. But outside of that, I still don't think Omen's going to see much playtime.
Yes. I think that you're going to look at maps where he's already seeing some degree of success, like Ascend's ever infamous Omen split. I expect to see a lot more of that type of shenanigans. Yeah. But other than that, I think this is sort of trivial buffs. Yeah. I will say, though, that directionally where the buffs are is quite interesting. Because I put out a video when Neon was released about mobility creep and how I thought that Omen lacked a niche, and one of the things that they needed to change was how his Shrouded Step interacted, specifically that he needed to teleport faster and draw his weapon quicker. And one of the first things that they buff about him is that his TP delay.
Right, is listening.
Just saying. Well,
say that.
It just points in the right direction, that I think they understand that Omen does sort of lack a niche, and that they're in a similar wavelength as me in terms of the direction that's going to be easiest to push him.
Either Ride is listening or you're an Oracle. And we'll get to how you're more of an Oracle when we get to the Brimstone changes. So I think we can kind of move through Omen onto the next agent, which, oh, look at that, it's Brimstone. So the Sky Smoke's deploy time has been decreased, which I think is quite nice. I felt like it did take a little while, although to be fair, he can drop 3 smokes at the same time. So, kind of made a bit of sense there. The radius is slightly bigger. The smoke height is, it matches the other controllers, which is always quite nice. And the stim beacon. Oh, Oracle, tell us how you somehow predicted this one.
So, if you look at Brimstone as just look at him on his face as an agent, and you sort of keep in mind the fact that Riot has always said that they want a very clear identifiable niche for every agent in their game. Brim's whole shtick was that he was the quote-unquote explosive controller. His whole deal was, I drop a bunch of smokes, we go real fast because I can smoke explosively. And he's obviously been in a really miserable balance state for a pretty long time at this point. And so one of the buffs that I've recurrently suggested would be a really logical fix is just slap some move speed on his stim. It adds to the explosivity that's already a core element of his design. It fits thematically, it plays to the power fantasy. And so for them to be like, oh yeah, we put a move speed steroid on stim, I'm like, cool. That could have happened like a month ago. I'm glad we caught up.
Oh my god.
And I mean, I don't think anyone is, well, I mean, I guess a few people are, but in general, I think these changes in a vacuum are good.
They're
right?
amazing. Yeah.
In a vacuum, this moves exactly to what Anders was talking about. We already saw people trying to do the explosive controller thing with Brimstone, right? On a couple of maps. It became more and more rare as more and more people got used to playing like Astra and Viper, just because Astra and Viper were really, 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 really good. Way too good, obviously. But this is where we get to this patch interacting with the rest of the patch notes, and that is where it becomes a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
So shall we move on?
Yeah. Let's
is that what we're saying? All right.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying here, because this is the one that really matters, man. Oh my god, they took Astra out back like old Yeller, dude. Like it's rough for Astra right now. It is.
What do you mean? She can buy a Marshall on round 1. She's busted.
I literally busted, as in removed from the game temporarily busted. But
yeah.
I mean,
Astra has been disabled because she could sell one of her stars, which was a little awkward, and then buy a Marshall on round 1. So thankfully they are addressing that, but I doubt they're going to address the other issues that we will shortly point out.
I mean, the big ones are, well, everything. They basically neutered every part of her kit. Like what part of her kit?
What do you mean? Her max star placement has been increased 3-fold. I mean, it's massive.
Great. So now instead of hitting 95% of the map, she hits 100. Huge. Absolutely
With
huge.
her bad util,
Yeah, it's insane. So down a star off the top is immediately probably the most punishing, and the balance element I disagree with the most aggressively.
Yeah.
I think that this goes into like my deep personal strategic philosophy about the game and how agents fit into like a number of different stylistic silos. You have like control, mid-range, and aggro. I think that Astra as an agent was always designed in a way where she was meant to be like a primary type control agent who's very focused on stalling, like a permission focus and saying you can't go places unless they say you can go there. That's like what her kit was designed to be. And her secondary type was mid-range, so she was meant to have high utility volumes and be able to sort of leverage those throughout game phases. This star reduction, when combined with the increased CD on star retrieval on dissipating, basically says you're not allowed to play as a mid-range character at all anymore. You are strictly a control agent. And that in and of itself, like that's not the worst. But then we start going a layer deeper. So right off the top, we've reduced our star count. We've increased dissipate cooldown. We said, you're not mid-range anymore. You're only control. But then we go on to the rest. Gravity well, let's just increase the cooldown by 20 seconds. You're now no longer control. Because you can only contest the bottleneck once, and you have no way of intermediately contesting space.
Yeah.
You get to say, I either contest this bottleneck, or I contest your pre-exec positioning. I can't contest both. So what is she now doing? You've taken away her secondary type. You've neutered her primary type. And we're still only 2 of like, what, 5 nerfs into this patch? Come on.
Yeah. I personally, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head with the star. Absolutely. Like, there's no question. Nobody's disagreeing on that. I think they should have gone the opposite direction. I think the cooldowns should have been left as they were, and the durations should have been lowered, right? Like, let her use a bunch of abilities, but
they're less punishing.
Make them less punishing. Because the fact of the matter is, like, the gravity well, I've been saying it since they like had the trailer for Astra, right? Putting a gravity well, putting any ability that has the power to dictate the enemy's position, even temporarily, is unbelievably powerful, right? In a game where you can die in one bullet, it is unbelievably powerful. but this is the wrong direction to go with it, right? Like for Astra to basically have to choose, okay, do I want to have as many smokes now as the other controllers have? Do I want to have that vision control? Or do I want to use my useful utility once? And also, when I use my useful utility, I don't get another chance, ever, right? Because 45 seconds is half the round, right? That it's far too much. They have broken Astra's legs and arms and thrown her into a ditch.
Well, and it's a compound effect as well, because you're also saying we've basically taken limbs off of the controller. That's a really weird, redundant way of putting it.
the most suffocating controller.
Yeah, exactly. Like the most permission focused, most stally controller. We've taken away all of her assets to do her job, while we've buffed the most explosive controller. So now you're going to have compositions that are running Brim XXXX, and they're going to go to execute. You might get stalled by an Astra. Maybe she like blows her suck cooldown. Well, all right. I'm just going to throw a Stimmy on the ground, rotate to the other side of the map in 7 seconds, and well, guess what? 7 seconds is shorter than 45, so guess you'll lose.
Yeah. I mean, you literally have. Okay, can you get the Astra to blow Gravity Well in the first half of the round? If so, you win the round, right? You just win the round.
I mean, to be fair, 7 seconds is also shorter than 25, so
true.
But here's the thing: but it's percentages, right?
Exactly. Like you could at least play additional stall and or some sort of like counter rotation or containment, like some sort of elastic defense that would allow you to stall for that 25 seconds. You could be the best team on earth. You're not stalling for 45 seconds. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, they could have just made Gravwell a once per round CD at this point, and it probably would have had the same outcome as this.
Pretty much. Well, and I mean, 45 seconds, that's ages, right?
That's like, isn't that the longest cooldown outside of like ultimates?
The only use case for this that I think still has validity is I'm an attacking team that uses a suck to take early space, e.g. like I use it to deny an early op line when I'm like I'm using it to deny the front A main peak when I am on split attack. I use it to deny the front B main peak when I'm trying to get early main control. Those are the sort of use cases, because then I'm still gonna not necessarily have the suck for execute, but I'll have the suck for post plant. Yeah. That is the only situation where I see this still having value, is a very, very early round suck where you're banking on like an extremely late round closeout type of mechanic.
For sure. I do want to address a question we saw in chat real quick. Big Hit was asking, will pros get to play this patch yet? Don't explicitly know.
But I
don't believe there has been enough
play for
it would be surprising if we saw it this weekend, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it in the weekend following, basically.
I see, even there I'm not sure, because this is a really big change, and I know that a lot of teams, whenever there's like a massive like game-changing change, teams come and they say, listen, competitive integrity, you cannot completely shift the meta and expect us to fit in. So I wouldn't be surprised if we only see it in the next stage.
Yeah, or even in like playoffs of this stage.
Yeah, playoffs or Masters,
For context, from the perspective of someone who's actively having to accommodate these changes, I have to completely retool every single map in the playbook. Literally every single map in the playbook. I'm staring down like easily 100 hours of playbook remapping.
You have to learn Brim lineups.
For them to turn around and be like, oh, by the way, we're playing this patch this weekend, for example, that would just be asinine. Like, it would not make any sense whatsover.
Yeah. No one would be happy with that.
Nonsense. So
Sentinels would be happy. They get to play Brim and rush sites again. Other than that, though, I don't believe there's been official confirmation one way or the other. I do think we have to move, as much as we want to keep talking about Astra, because we could go on for the whole hour. We're already 20 minutes in, and we're on our first point to run it back.
All right,
we got to get this moving. Because I don't know about you, but I also have a lot of statements about the next agent too.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Okay. All right. Keep going.
Viper, I feel like Anders, you and I could go back on Viper for so long, but to put it briefly, at least from my perspective, I don't think this kills Viper. It just makes her a little bit harder to play, and I think that's kind of a good thing. Like, she's still going to be viable on Breeze, Icebox, these like big open maps, because Toxic Screen and Viper's Pit just don't do There's nothing else in the game that does anything like them, right?
Yeah.
I think we're gonna see a lot less playtime from Viper on maps without those like giant multi-sight lines with a big wide open area. Like, I don't know if she'll see as much playtime on Split. I don't know if she'll see as much playtime on Bind. It's certainly possible. The toxic screen is still pretty good. But I think that I don't hate this change as much as I hate the other changes, except for the snakebite change, because they need to fix that, because snakebite doesn't clear corners right now because it doesn't deal 150 damage. Because they didn't buff the damage when they nerfed the duration. So you can molly a corner with snakebite and someone can just tank it.
Here's my hot take. I hate this change way more than I hate the Astra change.
Really? I'm intrigued. Go for it.
Not like kind of more than the Astra change, like a lot more than the Astra change.
Interesting.
Because it fundamentally breaks what Viper is meant to do as an agent and changes her identity from the identity she had on release. This makes her less of a controller. Because you're giving Viper players an ultimatum saying, you functionally can never use your wall and your poison cloud at the same time ever again.
That change is rough. Yes,
it's an either or situation, because the fuel drain increase is so prohibitive that if you try to use both at the same time, you are actually trolling. And so you're gonna look at a situation where Viper is played on maps where you can safely use one piece of utility and then the next, e.g. Breeze, where I'm using my wall on exec, I'm using my orb and post. And in some cases, you'll see her still on maps like Bind, where you can use your like wall on default and orb on counter exec, things of that sort. Even in that use case, however, she's been staunchly nerfed. The fact that her utility now shows yellow coloration when it's on cooldown, that is
the info.
As someone who is an ex League of Legends player who was a jungle main and had to track timers off the top of their head, as an ex-professional World of Warcraft player who had to track like 30 cooldowns off the top of their head, the fact that we are not forcing players to track a goddamn 8-second cooldown is so tilting to me. Make people be good at your game. Do not dumb down everything to the point of literally just color coding. Come on now. Like, it's actually ridiculous.
That's fair.
Of all the things that I thought you were going to rant about today, I did not think that was going to be one of them. That was not on my bingo card.
This is it slowly boiling up, and we've just reached the point where things like the tweet. I had a tweet yesterday where I was basically like, this patch feels anti-intellectual to me, and a lot of people are like, I don't really get that, and I'm like, you're taking away secondary style types from every single agent. You took away Astra's mid-range. You're taking away Viper's aggro because now she can't use simultaneous orbs, so she can't facilitate execs efficiently. She has to sort of choose either or. You're simplifying the dynamism and the complexity of agents, and then you are just straight up making the game stupider with things like this. Like, there's no other way to put it. You are literally saying, as a player, you do not have to think anymore about this cooldown. It will literally just scream at you.
Yeah, you'll just...
And that's stupid. That is legitimately just dumb.
I think part of the reason that they're trying to make agents less diverse, I suppose, is because if you can fulfill more than like two roles or more, then you're effectively cutting out other agents. So now every agent to like one specific thing that it does, so that if you want to be able to do something else, you need to rethink how you're forming your composition. The problem is that it is somewhat breaking things.
It might be a little too much in that direction.
I think in the long term, what forcing single silo agents is going to do is decrease compositional diversity. Because the whole idea is, if I have a primary type and a secondary type, I can use one agent as a proxy for another much more easily. If I'm going from a control sub mid-range to a mid-range sub control, that swap was way more easy than going, this is a pure control agent, I'm just going to swap it for a pure mid-range agent. The compositional continuity there just shatters in most cases, whereas if you have this complexity, exactly, if you have the sort of two-layered system, your ability to just sort of mesh things and sort of make them work in interesting and intriguing ways is way more readily available, and they're just like, nah, we don't want that, which is a little bit upsetting.
We just spent another 7 minutes on Viper.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so
we haven't even gotten to the Icebox change.
Okay, the next thing is Icebox, which I think that we can kind of run through.
Oh, it's Yoru.
We're not talking about Yoru. Oh man, okay.
He's still not viable. Okay, next. No.
I do think I will say I don't think he's viable. I will say he's very fun now.
Yes.
I played Yoru a couple games yesterday. Oh my god, it's so much fun to just chuck util at people and make them figure out which angle you're coming from.
Dude, the fact that you can throw the recon dot onto the decoy and just be like, go. That is just busted. Yes, you can recon dot the decoy, dude.
That's pretty great.
Recon delivery system.
I do think that there is... I think the problem with Yoru is the same that the problem always was with Yoru still, that it just requires... Like, there's such a high skill ceiling for such a low impact value.
Yeah.
Right? Like there are a lot of cool outplays that you can do with Yoru's kit now, which I think he's going to be really cool in ranked. If you're just someone who grinds the ladder and you want to hit Radiant, if you're smart and you can figure out how to use Yoru to mess up every gunfight in a way that's advantageous for you, I think that's great. But at the pro level, he's not going to do anything. Yeah, exactly. He's a TikTok agent, right? He's going to be great for clips. He's already great for clips. It's hilarious watching people just W out a corner and get 3 kills because everyone thinks it's a decoy. But like Andrew said, and
we actually spoke
we're going to
about
see
that.
people try Yoru in pro play, but I don't think he's going to stick around very hard.
All right, and that's the take on Yoru. Moving on, because I actually really like some of the Icebox changes, particularly the changes on B, although I don't know if it really makes the biggest difference, but I think that they look good. So we start off here. Obviously, it's a little bit more difficult to push through onto the B site. They've now kind of blocked off that kind of entryway, which also makes that one Viper Molly that used to irritate the hell out of me, like way deep in the corner, it actually makes it viable slightly. But aside from that, it does kind of block off some of the sight lines a little bit, so I do quite like that one.
I think that these changes are super interesting in aggregate. I think that Icebox, like, it's really hard to get a read on. So historically, Icebox was it started super attacker sided, then it swung a little bit defense sided, and it sort of settled very close to a straight 50-50. But then when you break it down at a site-by-site level, that's not the case at all.
This change is wild.
Yeah,
this yellow change is ridiculous.
That's honestly gonna be. It's interesting because if they had not done that yellow change with the B main change that they made, I think it becomes like too easy for attackers to take that space. I think B literally gets too attacker sided.
Yeah, I agree. I think they did a good job of making A, less attacker sided, and B, less defender sided.
Yeah.
Right?
It used to be that attackers could go 10 rounds in a row and have it be like macro strategically sound. That's not going to be the case anymore.
Yeah.
So here's the other change that I found quite interesting. So everyone, I actually see the comment there, I hated the Sage meta. I don't feel like it changes terribly much of the Sage meta.
It's still a Sage meta, sorry.
You can still wall towards the back there. You can still wall that off.
You do
also,
the esports.
Even more ridiculously, you can plant the spike in the top of the tin, and then you can just wall it off, and then all you have to do is play from kitchen. Like, this is even more of a Sage meta.
Have you seen I think it's a bug. I don't think it's intended. I'm expecting them to patch it. But have you seen the thing where you can plant the spike basically in that hallway that comes from kitchen?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you meant in like top site.
No.
No, that's got to be a bug right now. There's no way they're gonna let you keep doing that. Because that would just be so dumb if they let you do that. Because then, like, finally mid to B would be viable, right? You just go up kitchen, you plant in tube. But yeah, I think overall, like, once a few of the bugs get ironed out, this is a really good change for Icebox.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. I think we can. Are we done? Yeah, I think we can move on. We only spent half the show on it. Half an hour later. Good lord! All right.
I was like. It's like the biggest patch in the last year. So
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong.
It's quite massive. Yeah, it is somewhat meta-defining, changing potentially. All right, so our next one, we've got a little video to show you guys. For those of you that missed the Knights monthly gauntlet, they brought in a producer. Now, just to give a little bit of insight, so what they do is on the two main Knights channels, they bring in casters and producers that get paid to do the official streams. Then what they do is they say, hey guys, if you would like to broadcast some of our matches on your stream as one of our community streamers, we won't pay you, but you can do it on your own channel. It's for your own content. We'll get into that in a little bit. I know Paul has a lot to say about that, but they allow you to do that. And the vetting process is not ideal. And I do want to preface this by saying I love the people that work at Knights. I think they have the greatest intentions, but I think that their execution, particularly here, has been not great. So first and foremost, we're just going to run that video for you, Cody.
Can I go back to countdown for a second? No. It's muted.
So if you can hear that voice, that kid is like 13. And what happened here was the casters were muted. Chat was like, oh, the casters are muted. What's going on? And the kid had clearly accidentally mixed up the audio sources, and it was a complete mess up. And what it later came out was that this kid has like zero producing experience. The problem came in, I think that if they were casting rando teams A and B, no one would have cared. But the fact is they got given the 100 Thieves game. Literally the first game that 100 Thieves played after they like boomed their roster. This was massive. There were over 2,000 people watching. It was a screw up. Now, before I open it to the floor, I just want to say, Knights screwed up. They did, 100%. This should have been vetted way better. And 9% of the blame definitely goes on to Knights there. But what I will say, and to be fair, you know what, cool, this kid has some serious balls to have gone for something like this. But from what I understand, there was a little bit of misinformation regarding his ability to do this job from his side, and there's a lot of he said, she said going on about, well, did Knights know how old he was? Did they know the extent of his experience? I also understand that he may have fudged a few truths here and there to get in on the broadcast. So 100%, you know, train this kid up. I'm sure he'll be wonderful in the future, but I feel like we shouldn't turn him into somewhat of a hero for getting in onto a 100 Thieves broadcast. But Knights, come on, get it together, man. Like, as I said, I have so much respect for the people that work there, but wow, this was a massive oversight. All right, to the floor.
I definitely think that none of us are here to glorify lying on your resume, right? I mean, you know, especially if that resume takes you into a public space, right? But man, I've been trying to decide all week how hard I wanted to go on this show. In terms of my opinion here, how much I wanted to say. What I will say is that this, I know that in the Valorant community there's a lot of love for community streams because they bring games to light that otherwise might not be seen, right? Which is I think that in a vacuum in and of itself is a good thing.
Yeah.
But the problem with community streams is that there is very little oversight. There is no payment, so you are not working with professionals. Even, I guarantee you, 100%, even if this, like, they had a different producer and that didn't happen, I guarantee you that chat is still a mess with everybody whining about how casters this, production that, observer, blah, 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 blah.
And they do that anyway, so yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I have absolutely no, like, first off, if you do that in Twitch chat, you're stupid. Like,
and you
there's
suck.
just no way around it.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think you're accomplishing. Nobody who makes the decisions, who has half a brain, is ever looking at Twitch chat to see if they should bring casters, production, or observing back. It's just not.
Also, the casters don't care because they're the ones generally getting paid, and you're the pleb in Twitch chat.
Well, except in a community stream where they're not getting paid.
Except in a community stream.
but keep in mind, generally, things like this only happen when you don't pay people. That is where I'm going to try and leave it. Is things like this only happen when your bottom line is more important than the quality of show that you are putting on. When you say, hey, we can have 4 more streams and not have to pay another dime because people will work for exposure bucks. And I have been there as a caster.
We all have,
right?
Yeah.
if I was just starting out and someone says, hey, you want to cast 100 Thieves game? Or hey, you want to produce 100 Thieves game? You won't get paid. I'm taking it.
Yeah.
Right? Like there is no question, right? Because it is great experience. Don't get me wrong. But that is not the place that new casters, new production, new observers should be getting experience. Not on big matches like that. Right? Not in tournaments with thousands and thousands of dollars for the prize pool. Not in tournaments where there are logos. There was debate on Twitter whether or not it was actually sponsored. I don't know where that ended up, but it certainly looks sponsored by the fact that there are brand logos in the bottom corner, right? At the very least. This should never be a situation that ever happens anytime ever. And if you just pay people a good wage, a livable friggin' wage, it would be far, 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 far less likely to happen.
And as a final thought, just vet your potential talent a little bit better, you know? All right, let's move swiftly along, because, yep. Okay, the next one is just in regards to VCT EMEA. So the guys didn't talk about it last week because I wasn't here, surprise, surprise. And we don't have a ton to talk about this week because due to the conflict in the Ukraine, Champions Tour EMEA has been postponed definitely. Now, that was tweeted out last week before the weekend's matches. There was another tweet that came out in the last couple of days where they said, look, we still haven't actually figured out what the solution is just yet, because bearing in mind, EMEA has a lot of Russian, Ukrainian, Eastern European players, and there's a lot of tensions at the moment. So this has been postponed indefinitely. We're not 100% sure when that's going to start up again. So keep your eyes peeled on that one. And of course, when it does come back, we will let you know on the show. Moving along once again. This one I think we all maybe saw coming. The reasoning was an interesting. Raucus is no longer with Sentinels. And the reasoning that he cites is that the two orgs, because he is still technically contracted to FaZe, they couldn't reach an agreement in terms of a buyout. Now, this isn't the reason that I thought this would happen, but I still somewhat saw this coming. I don't know. Anders, what do you think?
Honestly, it's really hard to get a read on because there's a decent chance that this is kind of like a convenient excuse to not continue with the team, but I have no inside information. I have no idea how much coaching he actually did for the roster. It's very, very interesting because you have a situation where this could be that Sentinels sees him as a phenomenal coach and FaZe was borderline exploitative with the buyout that they levied on him. Could also have a situation where Raucus actually isn't really coaching. He's basically just an idea guy who's serving as a sixth man for the roster. And so Sentinels doesn't see the real value in paying an exorbitant buyout for him. If he was a great coach and FaZe wasn't being exploitative, this buyout would have happened. Yeah. So like what side of the court is really the fault in this on? Is it because FaZe has a ridiculous buyout, or is it because Raucus isn't actually coaching this team and is more of an idea guy? I don't know either way, but it's going to be one of those two factors.
I will say, at least from the sounds of it, from what Raucus said and what a bunch of the other Sentinels players said on Twitter, right, was that they, at least on Twitter, right, and
as I say, publicly,
exactly, right, you know, it at least sounded like Sentinels did want Raucus as a coach, right? It at least sounded like the Sentinels players were agreeable with him, and they actually really enjoyed having that extra brain to come in, and Raucus specifically being it. That's what it sounded like. Who knows if that's actually what happened behind the curtain, but rough stuff for Raucus either way. I think I do think he is actually a pretty smart player. One of the I liked watching him play on FaZe, certainly, and I hope he finds someone soon that can get him out from the bench on FaZe and get him away from contract jail.
My last rapid 2 cents on this, I think this is legitimately going to be better for Raucus in the long run.
Probably.
Because I don't know if this is immediately front of mind for everyone, but it is for me. Y'all remember that IGL shortage we have in North America?
Yeah, that's very true. The one where you started importing IGLs from Europe,
where you started yeeting people over across the Atlantic. Yeah, that's well, here you have a guy who's now was coaching Sentinels at a world championship level. is now a restricted free agent,
Yeah.
but is now looking for opportunities as a player after having coaching experience. Just saying, IGL candidacy is pretty high here.
Yeah,
I will
sure.
say, like, so obviously the 100 Thieves thing was covered in the previous week, but I will say the funniest thing that I read was, like, his flight to America lasted longer than the 2 games that he played.
Yep,
Yeah,
unlucky.
which is really funny.
Big
His
oof.
flight either direction was
Yeah.
longer than both
A
games.
singular flight. Yeah, unlucky.
All right, moving swiftly along. It's finally happened. 24 Haven. The beautiful ladies have been teasing this for like months.
I feel like we talked about this the first time I came on this show, and
Yeah,
like back in
we
November.
were like, oh, it's Misfits. Like, Misfits are coming into Valorant. Woo! And there we go. It's finally been announced. We're not playing the sound, but the song is a bit of a banger, and I believe some of the actual players are singing in it, which is really, really dope. So I could be wrong on that one. I could be entirely wrong on that one, but that's my suspicion. So anyways, go ahead and check that out if you haven't yet. It's a really great song. And this is one of the best announcements we've had, in my opinion. So I think that it kind of makes sense that Misfits took this long. We don't really have to deep dive too much into it. I just think it's really exciting. Misfits debut as well, coming in with a women's team. I really, really like that. So good luck, ladies. And I look forward to seeing what you are going to be showing us in Game Changers end of this month. Yes?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, pretty sure. Pretty sure that's when Game Changers is.
Hell yeah.
Anders would know. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's Anders would definitely know. All right, let's move on to the next one, because G2, oh man, can they please make up their mind? So they drop Kellogg's, and then they do badly in a tournament, and then they bench Mixwell, they bring Kellogg, I say drop Kellogg's, they bench them. Then they bring Kellogg's back on. Then when it still doesn't go their way, they bench Kellogg's. They bring Mixwell back on, then they release Kellogg's entirely, and now Kellogg's is on Heretic. So, great stuff. He's managed to make his way onto a new team. But what the hell is going through G2's mind?
I know exactly what it was. So what happened was last week, 100 Thieves was getting a lot of press, and G2 said, hey, we're the ones who get press. We're the ones who want press here in the Valorant realm. Watch this.
It's actually just a vicious back and forth as to who can make the most ridiculous, nonsensical roster moves possible.
I still
Carlos
think
wants that
100
crown,
Thieves takes the
apparently.
cake. I still think 100 Thieves wins that round.
The infamous plus Mixwell minus Mixwell plus Mixwell minus Mixwell plus Mixwell moves. Perfect.
It's getting there. It's
the grand strategy.
Now all they have to do is re-sign Kellogg's and drop Mixwell.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Now,
then we're gonna be just out of our minds.
I don't feel like super iffy saying this, because it was said during a stream live on my channel. So from what I understand, and apparently this is fairly well known, fairly common knowledge, but there is friction between Nookie and Kellogg's.
Yeah.
And this is why they can't keep longer than 5 minutes, because tensions flare, and clearly Nookie is kind of the golden boy. So
I was gonna say, here's the coach / GM in me being like, get your shit together. Seriously. I know that Nookie is a great player, but he's a player, not your GM.
Yeah.
Come on,
100%.
guys. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
It bugs
Players making roster decisions in Valorant? No one would ever let that
TSM,
happen.
is that you?
No one would ever let that happen. TSM 100 Thieves, everybody else in the freaking universe.
God. Yeah, no. Anyways, moving, we got to keep barreling here. BBG. BBG have made some Omega potential changes coming in.
Yeah,
I think they dropped 2 players. They put 2 players on the bench. This is according to Liquipedia. And yeah, they've admitted that things have not gone the way that they wanted. They're going to be making significant changes, which is looking to be a really huge rebuild from the ground up. I think they even got rid of their coach. Like, everyone got
my understanding was that they basically nuked it.
Yes.
That pretty much literally nobody has left there. I think there might be like one person who was like an assistant coach or a manager or something, who's still around. I don't remember who. Rough stuff for the players, certainly. I liked a lot of those players too. But I mean, as an org, I can't say it doesn't make sense. Built by Gamers has not had much success recently, even in tier 2 tournaments. If you're gonna put money into a roster, you want to be at least doing decently in tier 2 tournaments. Otherwise, you know, this is going to happen.
Yeah. I think this is just like, to that point, this is the expiration of an experiment that was failed. No disrespect to the players, but they didn't produce the results they needed to.
Yeah.
End of story.
That's it. All right, we have one last roster change, and this pertains to the women's scene in EMEA, so I don't know if either of you will have any input on this one, but to me it's pretty important, and that is Alliance Coven have dropped 2 of their players and their coach. Now, for those that don't know, Alliance Coven were the old chat band roster. They were basically a 5-team in the women's Valorant scene in EMEA. They performed incredibly well for a time, but since joining Alliance have not been getting the same results. A lot of the teams seem to have started kind of overtaking them, and so Alliance are making some changes. They even said, so in the tweet where they say goodbye, literally in the thread, like the next tweet, they say, hey, we're holding try. Let us know if you want to join the team. So there isn't even an idea of what the next step is yet, but they've realized that these are the players they don't want. I believe it was Jade and Hated the most, which makes me a little bit sad because I really liked Hated the most. So it makes me sad to see her not on the team anymore. But there you go. That's all of the news, the roster changes. Oh, there you go. Roster changes for Alliance.
Twitter light mode. Cody, what are you doing?
Oh, man. Why are you like this? He's not even signed in. I think that's why.
That might do it, yeah.
I added that really late, and I didn't realize that he'd already put together the run of show, and clearly being the Omega cool producer that he is, he wanted to make sure that he could get the tweet in there. So, you know what? Props to Cody for that one.
It's your fault.
It is my fault. It's not his mishap, but it was pretty bad.
That's true.
So.
I blame Discord. I don't know. Okay. Anyways.
So anyway,
we gotta actually talk about the tournaments that happened last week in the last 10 minutes we have.
So this has been our Run It Back presented by Temple University. We are going to be ending that off and heading in. Thankfully, we only have 2 tournaments to talk about. So that is the Knights Gauntlet, over and above production issues. It's a pretty cool tournament. 100 Thieves did reasonably well, all things considered. They managed to make it into the grand finals, so good stuff there. Is this a sign of things to come? I know that they didn't perform as expected in VCT NA, or are they just now like a firmly tier 2 team?
I'm going to be honest. When I watched the Knights tournament, I was hardly watching 100 Thieves at all. Just because, like, they had the roster for less than a day when the Knights tournament started. I wasn't putting much stock in that. It's just, like, to get reps in with the team, right? I will say that Icebox and TSM, I thought were looking better than they had recently. So that's exciting at the very least. Whether or not they can keep up that performance and what that means in the future for TSM specifically, as they look to try and get back into that tier 1 argument, that remains to be seen.
Here's my toxic take. 100 Thieves, the jury is still out. The team is too fresh for this to be indicative of results. You want to know what team does get stuck firmly in the tier 2 bracket based off of this event, though? T1.
Go on.
T1 goes straight to the tier 2 bucket for me, which it's pretty rough, man. For
T1, I mean, it's in the name. Like, they're definitely not happy with that.
No, I mean, with the legacy that organization has, honestly, I'm shocked that they haven't completely upended their Valorant department at this point. Like, it's just been a comedy of errors and ridiculous headlines. Like, something's got to give here sooner rather than later. But that was my takeaway from this event. 100 Thieves too fresh to make conclusions. TSM even too fresh off of sort of their soft restructuring and change in attitude for me to be able to have a ton of belief in these results being like a long-term trend. Box performing better than they honestly ever have. So props to them, but I still don't think they're a top contender.
Wasn't that because, I mean, part of it because didn't they add somebody, Box? I forget.
Did they?
My memory is not what it once was. No, maybe I'm crazy. I might be crazy. Never mind.
I don't recall anything.
I think I'm insane. I think I am clinically insane. So don't worry about it.
Aside from that, though, because we don't generally go into this, but did you guys spot any teams that you think are worth keeping an eye on in the future? And I'm talking like outside of the typical tier 1, tier 2 teams that we see in these tournaments. Any teams that really kind of stood out to you with some potential? I
mean, I think it's difficult. I think there are more arguments for players to keep an eye on a lot of the time in these tournaments.
Yeah.
I will say in terms of teams, I always keep my eye on Zero Marksman Silver, but that's just because it's 4/5 of a collegiate roster from last season, and I really like a lot of those players. And I'm excited to see them like, constantly
and
put
I still
results.
like them. There you go.
That makes there we go. Perfect. But yeah, I think I mean I haven't gotten super into the weeds on the Knights tournament and looked at every individual player that made quarterfinals of the round of 16 or anything from a roster I wasn't aware of. It when it comes to stuff like this, it's very rarely, hey, here's this team that nobody's ever heard of. All 5 of these players are great. Because generally if that happens, they're gonna get signed to an org pretty quickly. Somebody's gonna want them. But it's more like who are the diamonds in the rough?
Okay, cool. All right, let's jump into VCT NA, and we are getting dangerously close to the end of the season, so we'll start with this week's results. Guys, what do we think? The Guard continue to look like somewhat of an unstoppable force. They do drop a map. Dude, everybody loves the Guard except LG.
Unlucky.
I love that tweet. That tweet was so funny. For anyone who doesn't know, Sean Garris was casting the Guard XSET game, and in between one of the maps, he was like, "Everybody loves the Guard. They're the most fun team to watch. How can you not love the Guard?" And then Moose from LG like quote retweeted it and was like, "Speak for yourself. You don't gotta play these guys. It sucks. It's rough out here." It was so funny. That's one of my favorite tweets of Valorant Twitter.
The other thing that I just point out before I kind of open the floor for you guys is Sentinels. Now, it just so happened that this match was on kind of just as I was going to bed. I'd been on broadcast for a while, planning to catch up the games the next day. You know how it is. And I get a message from someone that's like, what do you think of what's happening with Sentinels? What do you think the problem is? Is it the comp? And I'm like, I don't know. So I'll go in and I look at the comp. I think they were playing Breeze, and I was like, yeah, I can pick out a few problems with the comp, but over and above that, I mean, why are you still on Sentinels Copium? Why? I have been off the Copium since Masters 2. In what universe are we still going, Sentinels is the best org in Valorant, they're gonna beat everyone? Like, at what point do we realize the Copium is gone?
I definitely think it's ludicrous for anyone to say that Sentinels is even the best team in NA. It's rough for them to crack top 5 right now in NA. I will say, I think Sentinels looked better this week. And I think Sentinels proved to me, especially the Fracture game was the biggest indicator for me that Sentinels are putting work in behind the scenes to get better at the things that they have clearly slacked on a little bit. Like they got clapped on that map by I think it was like NRG, right? And they look significantly better. Bind was a mess, specifically, I think, because Optic are getting back into the game quicker than Sentinels, right? Like last week, we sent this match up as like, oh, Optic and Sentinels, both once upon a time, top dogs. Who's going to find their footing quicker? Optic, no question. They have very quickly gotten back into the conversation for one of the top dogs in NA, in my opinion. Especially off Bind. They just counter-stratted the ever-loving hell out of Sentinels. Sentinels were totally unprepared for what Optic were doing that match. The next 2 maps looked a lot closer, I think, because Sentinels had been working on a lot of the stuff that was troubling them before, but I'm definitely not ready to say like, oh, Sentinels, they're back on top. Good for them. Not even close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these results are honestly like what I've come to expect at this point in the season. You've got sort of like the, no pun intended, you've got the new guard and the old guard, sort of a changing of the guard.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, yeah.
Cody just muted his mic.
That's the last time we had Anders on the show. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No longer a regular guest, though. But in all seriousness, it feels like sort of the staples of yesteryear are falling by the wayside and are trying to find their footing, but failing to do so in spectacular fashion. Some more so than others, but that doesn't change the end result where my eyes are firmly planted on other teams at this point.
For sure.
And I don't know what it's going to take. Like, it'll be very interesting to see how this new patch affects a lot of these teams' ability to perform. Because like the meme that's already kind of circulating is that like, oh, we couldn't let Sentinels be bad for more than a couple of months. Better buff the shit out of their best play style.
Oh God!
Now just quick rotates and running onto the site.
Yeah, it's
We're
like
good
Flood
now.
rotates. Better give him a stimmy. Let's go.
Oh Lord! Stimmy and Neon. Noom.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, so I honestly with this patch, if Sentinels can't find their footing when they're literally just given a golden ticket to play exactly the way that they've found success with in the past, there's no hope. They got to make some sort of change at that point, because if you're given everything you want from a metagame perspective and you still can't convert, that's on you.
And to admittedly oversimplify absolutely everything, what was it? Oh yes, 100 Thieves, Pika Gasp. The changes didn't really do much.
Yeah, I mean, look, the fact of the matter for 100 Thieves is, I think you did see very clear rounds where the synergy does come in better than the old roster. So like, it's hard for me to say that this is the wrong direction for 100 Thieves, but like, there's no world where you blow up your roster with the timing they did, in the manner they did, and you still manage to do well in this stage, right?
No.
Like 6 months from now, maybe 100 Thieves, or even 4 months from now, maybe 100 Thieves are great, right? I don't give them much of a chance of making it out of groups at this point. They gotta beat X set. EG, I wouldn't be surprised if they beat them, but they gotta beat X set and then hope that a bunch of other crazy games go their way so that they can squeak in on a tiebreaker. Like, good luck. Good luck, dude.
But this is the problem though, because like with the way that VCT is structured, if you don't make it now, you have you get 4 to 6 months of doing absolutely nothing until the next VCT rolls around.
I don't think it's that long. I think next main stage VCT, I think, is in like late May.
So I was gonna say it's the summer.
It's not.
Yeah,
great,
it's summer.
Like, you're doing nothing. Okay, you're doing Knights tournaments, which I'm glad to see that 100 Thieves.
We'll see 100 Thieves in more tier 2 tournaments. That's for sure. And things are rough in the other group too. I feel bad for NRG, dude. I feel bad. I like the way NRG plays. I think they've had some good performances, but they just hit the 3 big dogs one right after another in the early stages, right? Like, they played Sentinels, then Optic, then V1. I think there's actually a world where NRG still gets out of this group and beats Knights and Rise pretty handily, but Knights are somewhat looking better every week.
Yeah.
Rise, I don't know what's going on with Rise, dude.
Dude, I had so much copium from them at the end of last year, and things are just not looking great. I will say though, I might have my maths wrong here, but if you don't make playoffs here, doesn't that kind of balk you for champs?
I mean, unless you make playoffs some other time and then have a really good run in
I think I haven't run the numbers now that I'm focused predominantly on Game Changers, but I'm pretty sure you could still make it, but you would have to go... You would have to flub out of this, qualify into the second main, go directly to that Masters, and then win that Masters. Like, I mean, it's that kind of fairy tale run to make it convert.
You would at least have to do you would at least have to make it to the next Masters, right?
Yeah, and do decently well.
Do decently well, and then you might, like, NA does still have, what, 3 slots for champs, right? Or is it 2? No, it's 3. I think
it's
right.
It's 2. EMEA has 3.
We got downgraded. Minor reason.
EMEA has 3. NA has 2.
Yeah.
EMEA got downgraded as well. Calm yourself.
I thought that was
deserved.
Oh no, because it's only 1 for
I take
Matt.
that on the chin.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was about to say maybe you could
about
squeak
how
into...
only got 1.
I was about to say maybe you could squeak into the LCQ. Oh, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard.
Squeaks. All right, so before we throw things to the end of the line, we're getting very, very close to playoffs here, guys. We're seeing how the points are kind of shaping up here and there. So what are your predictions as to which teams are actually going to make it into playoffs? I don't want a long story or discussion or reasoning. Just give me your teams. Who's in playoffs? Anders, we'll start with you because Paul's being cocky.
Oh, man. I mean, wouldn't it be easier to just say the 4 teams that we don't think are going to make it?
Right?
Like,
At least 3 of the 4.
Surely that's... I mean, I don't think NRG makes it, unfortunately. I don't think EG does. I think 100 Thieves is also boomed. And then I think Rise doesn't have enough gas in the tank to convert anymore. Yeah. I think that Knights is going to surpass them.
Yeah. I agree. I think there is there is a world where NRG wins their next 2 games and Rise and Knights both either fail to get wins or one of them gets 1 win and NRG still have a tiebreaker and NRG can squeak in. I think it's hard to do, but not impossible. I don't think Rise, 100 Thieves, or EG have a chance in hell. I actually think EG is mathematically eliminated, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're...
If not mathematically eliminated, it is damn near close.
I think they'd have to 13-0 a map.
Probably lose.
I think they'd legitimately have to 13-0.
Yeah.
Thieves, EG, and NRG are both 0-3, but EG are at a -35 differential. So
yeah, they'd have to do crazy differential magic. To...
The teams that EG have lost to as well, because they've lost to EG, they've lost to LG, they've lost to XSET, and they've lost to Scene, which makes like the tiebreakers really weird because XSET's 1 and 2 right now. But they're also XSET. We still expect them to be pretty good. They've had good performances and they've had a rough like schedule. They're, one of their losses is to C9 and the other one's to Guard. XSET is still expected to beat both 100 Thieves and LG in my book.
Yeah.
So I think they still make it, and then EG just can't qualify.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right, well, that's going to wrap up our show for this week, guys. Please, if you've enjoyed the content, follow the channel, follow our at Nerd Street, and if you liked us, you can also go and throw us a follow. Definitely follow Anders. He makes a lot of content on YouTube, rants about a lot of things, and is pretty smart about the things he rants about, so definitely go check that one out. Aside from that, yeah, that's going to be it. So we'll be back next week, Wednesday. I won't be back next week, Wednesday.
I will be.
Yeah, Paul will
I might be. No.
Anders probably will be. Mike will be back as well, so very likely that you'll have Anders back again. He's, you know what? I think you're becoming our sub. There you go.
Yeah. Pretty much, right? You're riding the bench, Anders.
Inactive roster. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back next week, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the games this weekend, and have a good one.